Having the number one wide receiver in fantasy can give you a huge boost when it comes to winning a championship. Here are some dark horse wide receiver candidates to finish as this year's best wide receiver for fantasy football. So defining dark horse, it is a wide receiver that has the upside to finish wide receiver 1, but you will not see them ranked as that on the majority of websites. Unlikely candidates. So I'm not going to be super hot takey here, but I'm just saying guys that you will not see as even top 3 wide receivers for the most part. I looked at data for the last 10 years of fantasy football who finished as the overall wide receiver 1. The overall wide receiver 1 averaged 171 targets, 122 receptions, 1,621 receiving yards, 12 receiving touchdowns, and 22.77 fantasy points per game. So who could be the wide receiver 1? Here are the candidates. Weeks 13 through 18, Amon-Ra St. Brown averaged 25.2 fantasy points per game. If we average the points per game in 2022 where he was healthy, it would have been 18.6. 9.6 targets per game across 17 games would be 163.2. Jared Goff threw the ball at a high rate in 2022. Jameson Williams is going to miss 6 games, and there's not tons of target competition in Detroit. Every season in the NFL, CeeDee Lamb has improved in targets, receptions, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and fantasy points per game. 156 targets in 2022. He was top 10 in air yards, deep targets, receiving yards, yards after catch, and total touchdowns. This was with Dak only playing in 12 games. Even with the Brandon Cooks edition, expect CeeDee Lamb to continue to have a huge target count and have big fantasy weeks. Garrett Wilson was top 12 for the wide receiver position in targets, red zone targets, air yards. He had 1,103 receiving yards and was top 20 in yards after the catch. This is big because he had Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, Mike White, and Chris Streveler at quarterback, and now he has Aaron Rodgers. I'm not comping Garrett Wilson to Davante Adams, but Aaron Rodgers has supported top 2 seasons multiple times for Davante Adams in fantasy points per game. He only had 4 touchdowns in 2022. That should change big time with Aaron Rodgers in 2023. Then last, Jalen Waddle has been number 15 and number 12 in fantasy points per game with back-to-back seasons over 1,000 receiving yards. Even with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle's explosive plays, receiving yard upside, yards after the catch are evident and make him fantasy relevant enough. His connection with Tua has been evident. He doesn't do great when Tua is not in the field, so healthy Tua is great for Jalen Waddle's stock. He was number 1 in both yards per target and yards per reception in 2022. There's tons and tons of fantasy football content all in one spot, patreon.com/P2WFantasy. You'll get access to the Discord. We have daily discussions in there. It's the spot to be if you play to win.